Hi, my name is Tony Lentz with FCT Assembly, Solders Division. I'm a field application engineer and chemist, and I work out of our Greeley facility.
Hi, I'm Steve Johnson, Director of Research and Development here at NanoSlic Smart Coating.
And this is Greg Smith, Manager of Stencil Technology with Blue Ring Stencils. And today we'll be discussing our new NanoSlic Long Life Coating Development and Performance Project. As innovation and demand continue to drive miniaturization in electronics, manufacturers face the constant challenge of assembling smaller and smaller components with repeatable processes and high yields. Printing of solder paste is the first step in the circuit board assembly process, and there have been many studies attributing the highest percentage of defects to printing. The challenge has always been to print solder paste through smaller apertures with lower area ratios. But when these apertures become small enough, solder paste will not release. So initially the stencil industry focused on stencil performance by improving the laser systems used during the stencil manufacturing process. Around 2010, fiber lasers replaced YAG lasers, and more accurate linear motion systems were built into the equipment specifically created to cut SMT solder paste stencils. These improvements created smoother aperture sidewalls, which resulted in better solder paste release. But miniaturization continued. Next, the industry turned to the materials used to manufacture the solder paste stencils, and they focused on improvements to the stainless steel foil itself. New stainless steel milling processes were developed, producing finer grain structures in the metal foils. These new fine grain foils, coupled with new laser technologies, cut even smoother apertures with location accuracies much tighter than the circuit boards themselves. Innovation, however, continued to push miniaturization, resulting in smaller package level components that continue to challenge assembly and tooling suppliers. And the demand and challenge to print smaller and smaller paste deposits onto circuit assemblies continued as wearables, mobile devices, military, and medical devices grew in demand. In 2011, nano treatments for SMT stencils were introduced. They were manually applied by first cleaning the stencil surface with a cleaner and primer, and then wiping on the monolayer treatment which bonded to the stainless steel surface. The result was a hydrophobic or water repelling and oleophobic or oil repelling surface on the bottom of the stencil. These new treatments prevented solder paste from adhering to the bottom of the stencil during the print process if the paste squeezed out between the bottom of the stencil and the circuit board. This was beneficial, especially when there was not a good gasket between the PCB and the stencil during printing. Better print definition and decreased underside wipe frequency were the primary benefits of these early stencil treatments and resulted in reduced bridging after print along with lower overall variation in the print process. Customers were able to increase the number of prints between underside wipe cycles from every print to every 10 prints and even every 20 prints. This reduced the use of wiper paper and increased throughput. However, these initial nanocoating treatments were only nanometers thick. They were clear, and it was difficult to tell when the coating wore off during the production process. This fact was proven time and time again as research done on SMT stencils and nano treatments became public. In fact, several research papers showed a slight decrease in solder paste release or transfer efficiency with these new treatments. Overall, though, the use of these early nano treatments provided better print results than not using them at all and were highly accepted in the marketplace. In 2013, three partner companies came together to develop a coating with the benefits of the early self-assembling monolayer treatments and with the added goal of improving paste release from the aperture walls. Florida Surtec, an established chemical company, brought expertise in polymer chemistry formulation to this endeavor. FCT Solder brought a high-level understanding of solder paste flux chemistry and a deep understanding of the solder paste print process as well. They also provided their SMT printing laboratory for research and development. And then finally, Blue Ring Stencils, then Fine Line Stencils, brought a deep understanding of solder paste stencil design and manufacturing, along with its broad customer base. NanoSlic Gold was developed and brought to market through the hard work and cooperation of these three companies. I've invited Steve Johnson, Director of Product Development with Florida Surtec and the inventor of NanoSlic Gold, to briefly discuss the development of the coating and the benefits it has brought to our industry.
Well, thank you, Greg. Yes, it's taken years of research and development here in our lab and a lot of teamwork, I'd like to say. We've worked closely with Tony Lentz in the SMT Print Lab. We've also worked with the field application engineers at FCT Solder and the application engineers also at Blue Ring Stencils. All of this has allowed us to dial in what is known today as NanoSlic Gold. We released NanoSlic Gold in 2013 through Blue Ring Stencils, our exclusive licensee in the United States. This breakthrough coating technology, that is NanoSlic Gold, was the culmination of our work to provide the benefits from self-assembling monolayer treatments with the added benefit of significantly improving solder paste release. Well, how is this technology better? The coating was 3 to 5 microns thick versus 3 to 5 nanometers thick. In other words, 1,000 times thicker. And it was sprayed on instead of being manually applied. Really, self-assembling monolayers are what we call treatments. They're not really coatings. Our research determined that a real coating was necessary to completely encapsulate the stencil aperture sidewalls, and a coating that was hydrophobic and oleophobic. In other words, it would repel the flux in the solder paste. Now, to many, that might seem like common knowledge, but we had to develop this baseline knowledge in the early days. The result was up to 25% better paste release in small, low area ratio apertures. It meant stencil customers could successfully print area ratio apertures much lower than 0.66, which is the current IPC recommended minimum. With this new coating, customers didn't have to reduce the foil thickness for very small apertures, and they could avoid using step stencils much of the time. The coating we developed was also very hard. It was very durable and highly chemically resistant to stencil cleaners. In fact, we developed a ceramic polymer, something totally new, which gave the coating properties that in many ways exceeded the requirements. We also added a gold color and a UV fluorescing indicator, which allows the operator to validate its presence visually, both on the surface of the stencil and in the aperture walls when using a microscope with a UV light. So we could say this partnership between our companies with expertise in polymer chemistry, solder paste formulation, and stencil design has allowed us to improve the coating year after year. For example, in 2014, we developed from the ground up the spray application equipment necessary to apply NanoSlic uniformly on the underside of the stencil foil and in the aperture walls. This was another challenge. After all, it's not easy to coat the sidewall of a 5 mil diameter round aperture in a 3 mil thick foil without clogging the apertures during the spray process. It took a lot of time and energy to develop this spray equipment. Then, in 2016, we started licensing NanoSlic in other countries. Then we established our global technical support group. This led the way to a global footprint for NanoSlic technology. And as SMT component miniaturization continued, our technology was improved again in 2017. There were further improvements to the spray application and the curing process. Then, earlier this year, we made additional improvements in order to introduce our fast cure NanoSlic process. Now, Blue Ring Stencils can ship coated stencils the same day when orders are received early in the morning. To sum it up, what makes our NanoSlic Gold stencil coating unique and keeps it in the forefront of technology is the partnership we have between our chemical, stencil, and solder paste companies.
Thank you, Steve. As we continue to strive for that perfect printing stencil, we must be aware of the challenges we are faced with. The primary challenge we have seen with NanoSlic Gold over the past several years is that it is prone to chipping and peeling under certain conditions. So in 2018, our partner companies launched what we called the Long Life Research Project. The project's primary goal was to improve the lifetime of the coating by at least 10 times. I've asked Tony Lentz, chemist and field applications engineer at FCT Solder, to briefly discuss the different areas that we've concentrated on over the past few years in addressing this chipping and peeling issue.
Thank you, Greg. Chemistry compatibility seems to have been a focus for coating damage over the years. We've talked a lot about the pH of cleaners or the concentration of cleaners, but there's definitely been a lot of discussion about cleaning chemicals and how they might impact the coating. Generally speaking, the coating is not damaged by cleaning chemicals. It's very chemically inert, it's very chemically impervious, as opposed to wipe-on type coatings, which are one molecule thick. Those can certainly be affected by chemistry, dissolved by chemistry, redeposited in some cases, or in some cases dissolved and completely stripped off the stencil. Whereas the NanoSlic Gold coating itself repels most chemistry, and it's sort of like a plastic type polymer. It's very impervious to chemicals. Now the coating itself, however, is it's very brittle, and so it can be damaged through mechanical means, wear, chipping. Like if you scratch the coating, you can certainly shave it down. And what typically happens is circuit boards have high spots on them, and we see wherever there's high spots, such as legend marking ink or thick copper weight circuitry, or the edges of the boards themselves, which are sharp, are pressing up into the stencil. And during the print process, imagine the circuit board pushing up into the stencil, sort of bending the stencil around the board. And then from the top side, the squeegee comes down and applies fairly high pressure to that stencil to print that solder paste cleanly, and it's bending the stencil even a little more across those high spots of the circuit board. And those are the spots where the coating begins to wear over a period of time, especially with high volume production. High volume production lines, you'll see coating wear around the perimeter of the circuit board and wherever there are high spots. And you can actually see the high spots of the circuit board eventually get translated up into the steel of the stencil itself. The pressure is great enough over a period of time that the steel gets deformed and bent permanently with the circuit board image. And so that's really where the damage begins with the coating. It's a mechanical type of a damage, not a chemical damage. Now, there are cases where that mechanical damage can start, where there's some chipping going on in the coating, and then you put a coated stencil into a cleaning system, especially a cleaning system that would be a high pressure spray and air type system. And the spray pressure itself will impinge on the edges of wherever the coating's begun to crack, and it'll continue to break it away slowly over time, chip it away. And so you can pull a stencil out of the cleaning system, especially if it's a high pressure spray and air system, and it may look like the cleaner stripped the coating off, but really the coating started chipping due to some mechanical damage that occurred previously. So over the years, I've never really been able to connect cleaning chemicals to coating damage. That is a very rare thing. It doesn't happen. What's more important is to look at how the coating is being damaged or worn through the circuit board and the print process itself. The wipe materials also play a role. The underside stencil wiping materials sometimes are very coarse, they're rough, and the pressure that's applied by the cleaning system is even greater than the amount of pressure of the circuit board being pushed up into the stencil. And so those cleaning wipe materials will just catch on any sharp edges of the coating wherever the chipping has begun, and it'll continue to chip it away. That's typically the kind of damage we see to the coating. Now, with all that being said, very few stencils actually show signs of damage. In most cases, if you got damage, it's happening mainly on high volume production lines, or there's something that the company is doing that is unusual, like high pressure spray systems for cleaning. And so those are the areas to look in order to to determine the root cause of wear or damage on the coating.
Thanks for explaining in more detail the challenges we face with the coating, Tony. Again, this is why we launched the Long Life Research Project in 2018, to focus on this one challenge, chipping and peeling. As we began this project, the question became, how do we test new coatings and processes as they're developed? Initially, we tried running high volumes of print cycles on our SMT printer in the lab and quickly realized the time involved. Using our SMT printer would just take too long. We needed to develop a piece of equipment that could simulate high squeegee print cycles in shorter time increments versus a standard stencil printer. We successfully designed and built this piece of equipment and refer to it as our SMT print simulator. This equipment allowed us to make incremental changes to either the coating chemistry, application process, or curing process, then test print thousands, 10,000s, or even hundreds of thousands of print cycles. We were then able to examine the coating and processes while they were tested for chipping and peeling and truly understand when changes produced real benefits. This print testing provided a data-driven method to test high-volume printing with real squeegee blades and a real PCB. Although this data was critical in the development of a long-life stencil nano coating, we wanted to understand even more. To quantitatively understand the adhesion characteristics of ceramic coatings to the very thin foils used in surface mount stencils. I want to bring Steve Johnson back to explain the method that he developed to measure adhesion of the stencil coatings to the surface of the stencil foils.
As Greg said, the second challenge we faced was to develop a reliable method to measure the adhesion. In other words, quantitatively evaluate the adhesion, not just rely on the appearance of the coating or anecdotal evidence. We looked at a number of standard methods used to test adhesion. For example, the industry standard ASTM D3359, the crosshatch test. Seems like everyone uses it to see if coatings will delaminate or chip off a surface. But it doesn't accurately test the adhesion forces required to lift a stencil coating when it's subjected to the actual stress of stainless steel squeegees going back and forth, and the stencil and the coating flexing. We tried other off-the-shelf methods, but we had the same result. So we had to develop a better method. We wanted to back up all of our research with real data. The method we developed here, we call the micro-scrape test, or micro-scrape testing. Now, how does it work? As a micro-scraper is pushed across the surface of the coating, it measures the force, in this case grams, required to lift the coating off the surface of the stencil. And it's great because it works with very thin coatings and provides a reliable and ultra-precise measurement. Another aspect of the testing method is that it's not affected by the surface tension or the hydrophobic, oleophobic properties of the coating itself. So knowing this force in grams required to lift the coating from the stencil surface, we can now evaluate changes in process, changes in surface prep, changes in chemistry to see how it affects the coating's durability. In this video, you can see a force is applied to the scrape tester probe as it moves across the coated surface. Then the force in grams is increased until the coating begins to lift, as you see in the video, and then this force in grams is recorded. Well, after almost 2 years of research and development using both the print simulator, which we talked about, and the micro scrape tester, we were able to develop a breakthrough coating technology, and it's a tremendous improvement. Our research has led to the development of a patent-pending surface modification process. By selectively modifying the surface of the stencil foil around the stencil apertures, both mechanically and chemically, prior to coating the stencil, we're now able to extend the life of the coating by as much as 10 times. This new process increases the surface area of the foil around the apertures over 50%, and it takes now approximately 10 times the shear force to remove the coating from the stencil.
So let's look at the data supporting this huge improvement in our NanoSlic Gold technology. Again, you can see we are modifying the surface of the foil prior to coating both physically and chemically. The modified surface is 1 micron lower than the foil surface in some areas and 1 micron higher than the foil surface in others. This surface modification increases the surface area by over 50%, providing better adhesion characteristics. The coating is also anchored in these recesses, which hold it in place during the abrasive processes as the squeegee travels across the stencil and pushes the coated surface of the stencil down onto the uneven surface of the printed circuit board. When measuring the peak shear force required to remove the coating with our micro scrape tester, we were able to increase the force required for removal from a mean of 14.2 grams for our current process to 52.2 grams for this new process. In other words, it takes over 360% more force to remove our new coating technology than our current coating. How did this new coating hold up in our print simulator? Let's take a look. These first images are taken after 5,000 print cycles. You can see a few chips in the current process image and none in the new modified surface coating. Again, looking at images of the same stencils after 25,000 prints, you can see even more chipping on the current process images, and the modified surface coating still looks brand new. For many of our customers, this would be the lifetime of their stencils. However, we do have customers printing many more boards than this, so we continued our testing. Looking at these images after 50,000 print cycles, the current process continues to degrade, and it's difficult to see just a very few small chips in the modified surface coating. At 75,000 print cycles, you can see the current process continues to degrade, and we start to see some small chips around the QFN and micro BGA on the modified surface coating. The differences are dramatic. The last slide we'll look at here is after 100,000 prints. The current process coating has worn out, and even after 100,000 print cycles, the new modified surface coating is holding up very well. After 100,000 print cycles, the new modified surface coating has fewer and smaller chips than the current process at 25,000 prints. Beta site testing has also been underway over the last 6 months with tremendous results. Multiple locations have reported excellent coating adhesion up to 75,000 prints, and we're waiting to hear more data from those companies. Finally, we wanted to make sure there was nothing inherent in this new process that would inhibit solder paste releasing from the stencil apertures as compared with our current NanoSlic Gold coating. So we printed 20 boards on our SMT printer in the lab using 4mm slick foils, Type 4 no-clean solder paste, and here are the results we found. In this chart, we're looking at square apertures with a 2mm corner radius, with area ratios of 0.4, 0.5, and 0.6. As you can see, both coating processes, current and the new modified surface coating, show significant transfer efficiency improvement over a non-coated stencil. As is normally seen, area ratio apertures lower than 0.6 typically show the largest gain in solder paste release, and as the area ratio increases, the improvement in transfer efficiency decreases. The other thing about NanoSlic Gold is that it always decreases coefficient of variation, or CV, in the print process, showing less variation in the print process with NanoSlic Gold coating technology. The purpose of this informational webinar is to introduce the industry to our new patent-pending coating technology. When will it be available? We've designed and started building the additional equipment needed for the selective surface modification process, and we'll have it by the end of the year. Once the equipment is received, we will begin setting up the process in our New Jersey facility, and we'll implement this new technology by year end. And you're probably asking what this new process will be named and what the additional charge will be. The name will remain the same, NanoSlic Gold, and we will not be charging anything additional for this new longer life technology. And soon, all facilities will have this new technology, and it will remain the gold standard for stencil coating technology throughout the industry. Our goal at Blue Ring Stencils is to be the technology leader in the SMT stencil industry, and this breakthrough technology shows our continued commitment to this goal, to continue to innovate, improve, and lead as our industry continues down this road of miniaturization. If you have any questions, we would be happy to answer them, and thank you for your time.